My name is Maya, and I am a cartographer of my own life. I map the fault lines, trace the tributaries of joy and grief, and mark the precise coordinates where everything changed. For me, that point is a Friday afternoon in late September, a day that began with the crisp, promising air of Denver and ended in the suffocating humidity of my own private cataclysm. For 8 years, my map was centered around a single, immutable landmark: David. David Thompson, my husband, a man I believed I knew with the geological certainty of bedrock. Our life was a well-charted territory, a comfortable topography of shared jokes, future plans, and the quiet intimacy of knowing which side of the bed the other preferred. Adjacent to this central feature was another, a continent of its own. Lisa, my best friend since college, a constant presence in our shared geography for over a decade. I thought I had their latitudes and longitudes memorized. I was a fool, navigating by a constellation that had long since burned out. The business conference in Denver, a keynote presentation on emerging market strategies I was slated to give, was meant to last until Thursday. But on Tuesday afternoon, a domino tipped. The main speaker, a tech billionaire with a flair for the dramatic and, apparently, a compromised immune system, canceled. The event imploded. Most attendees saw it as an opportunity for an impromptu ski trip to Vail. I saw something better: 2 extra days with David. We had been navigating a difficult passage, a desolate stretch of our map labeled infertility. 3 years of clinical appointments that smelled of antiseptic and disappointment. 3 years of calendars dictated by ovulation cycles, of conversations that started with hope and ended in the quiet, shared grief of another negative pregnancy test. The stress had eroded us, creating a subtle but widening rift valley between us. I thought this surprise, this unexpected gift of time, coupled with the news of a potential promotion to regional director I was confident I'd secured, could be the bridge across that chasm. The flight home was a study in suspended animation, 4 hours of recycled air and fizzy optimism. I rehearsed the surprise in my head, a little domestic screenplay where I would walk in, drop my bags, and watch his face transform from confusion to delight. I envisioned the evening, the expensive bottle of Cabernet I'd bought at the airport gift shop, his favorite dark chocolates with sea salt, the way he'd pull me close and say my name like it was the answer to a question he'd been asking for a long time. I was so invested in this fantasy, this projection of a future that existed only in my mind, that I ignored the faint, dissonant hum beneath the jet engines of my excitement. The taxi ride from the airport felt like traversing a foreign country. The familiar landmarks of our city seemed altered, imbued with a strange new light. I scrolled through photos on my phone, resisting the primal urge to text him, "I'm on my way." The surprise was the thing. The surprise was the grand gesture, the proof that despite the long hours and the business trips, he was still the fixed point of my compass. Our house stood on Maple Street, a 2-story colonial I had bought with the inheritance my grandmother left me. It was my proudest acquisition, a brick-and-mortar testament to my success, a vessel I had intended to fill with the life David and I were supposed to build. As the taxi pulled to the curb, the first geological anomaly presented itself. David's Honda was in the driveway, as expected, but so was Lisa's white sedan, and at least 4 other cars I didn't recognize were parked along the street, their metallic skins gleaming under the late afternoon sun. A work gathering? It seemed unlikely. David, a graphic designer at a mid-sized firm, rarely brought his work home, and he certainly never hosted without weeks of my meticulous planning. A knot of anxiety, small and tight as a fist, formed in my stomach. I dismissed it as travel fatigue. I paid the driver, the crinkle of bills a mundane sound in a moment that was about to become anything but. Wheeling my suitcase up the stone walkway, the one I'd had installed last summer, I fished for my keys. That's when the sound reached me, carried on the breeze from the backyard. Laughter. Not just a few chuckles, but a chorus of festive, uninhibited joy. It was the sound of a party. My hand froze over the lock. I stood perfectly still, a statue in my own front yard, listening. I strained to identify the voices, to place them in the familiar context of our life. I heard David's brother, Mark. I heard our neighbor from across the street, Mrs. Gable. And then, a sound that sliced through the ambient noise like a shard of glass: Lisa's laugh. High-pitched, unrestrained, a sound I had once associated with late-night confessions and shared bottles of wine. I unlocked the door and stepped into the cool silence of the foyer. The house smelled wrong. Not of David's usual neglect, piles of mail and a faint scent of stale coffee, but of something else. Something floral and cloyingly sweet, and underneath it, the rich aroma of roasted meat. The living room was immaculate. Not just tidy, but staged. Fresh flowers, lilies and baby's breath, sat in a vase on the coffee table. The pillows on the sofa were plumped and arranged at perfect angles. It was the kind of clean that signaled an event, a performance. My suitcase wheels echoed on the hardwood floor as I set it by the stairs. I moved towards the kitchen, my footsteps unnaturally loud in the strangely silent house. The party sounds grew louder, a wave of voices and clinking glasses cresting just beyond the doorway. I was about to call out David's name, to announce my arrival and shatter their surprise, when a snippet of conversation drifted from the kitchen and stopped me cold. And I think a pale yellow is so much more modern than pink or blue, don't you? It was a woman's voice I vaguely recognized, one of David's colleagues. Oh, definitely. And what about names? Have they settled on one? Another voice asked. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. A frantic, trapped bird. A baby shower? For whom? Mark's wife had just had a baby 6 months ago. No one else in our immediate circle was expecting. I took a tentative step forward, peering around the corner into the room that had been the heart of my home. The sight that met my eyes was a visceral, physical assault. My blood didn't run cold. It turned to ice, to solid matter in my veins. The kitchen, my kitchen, with its granite countertops I had painstakingly chosen and the subway tile I had argued with the contractor about for weeks, was festooned with pale yellow and white streamers. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, their strings dancing in the draft from the open patio door. The central island was a mountain of gifts wrapped in paper printed with smiling ducks and sleepy moons. A large, professionally decorated cake sat in the center of it all, and stretched across the sliding glass doors, a banner. The letters were cheerful, cartoonish, a stark, almost violent contrast to the horror blooming inside me. Welcome, baby Thompson. Thompson, our name. My name. The name I had hoped to one day give to my own child. I stood there, paralyzed, a ghost in my own life story. The scene before me was a diorama of betrayal, meticulously constructed. Someone was having a baby shower in my house, for a baby with my husband's last name, and I, the woman whose name was legally bound to his, had not been invited. He looked vital, happier than I had seen him in years, gesturing with a pair of tongs as he spoke. And then my eyes found Lisa. She was the guest of honor, enthroned in one of our wicker patio chairs. She wore a flowing, empire-waist yellow dress, the fabric stretched taut over a round, impossibly pregnant belly. She was at least 6 months along, maybe 7. Her hand rested on the curve of her stomach, a gesture of serene, maternal ownership. 6 months. The timeline unfurled in my mind with brutal clarity. This hadn't been a fleeting mistake. This was a project, a long-term investment. This had been happening for at least 9 months. All those late nights David claimed to be at the office. All those weekends I was away on business. All those times Lisa had canceled our girls' nights, pleading a migraine or a stomach bug. It was a tapestry of lies, and I had been admiring the pattern, oblivious to the grotesque image it formed. As I watched, David walked over to her. He placed his hand over hers on her belly, his face softening with a tenderness that I realized, with a fresh wave of nausea, I hadn't received from him in a very long time. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. It was a gesture of such practiced intimacy, of such profound and casual ownership, that it screamed of a shared history I knew nothing about. My mother-in-law, a woman who had passive-aggressively lamented our childlessness at every family gathering, was cooing over a tiny pair of knitted booties, holding them up for Lisa to admire. And my mother, my own mother, the woman I called every Sunday, the one I had cried to just last month about the growing chasm between David and me. She was laughing, chatting with the other guests as if this were the most natural celebration in the world. They all knew. Every single person at this party was a co-conspirator. They had all watched me struggle, watched me grieve our infertility, watched me pour my energy into saving a marriage that was already a hollowed-out shell. And they had kept this secret, nurtured it, and were now gathered in my home to toast its fruition. I slid the glass door open. The sound was a dull scrape, but it carried across the patio like a gunshot. The conversations faltered, dying out in waves as one head after another turned in my direction. The festive atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a thick, crackling tension. Lisa saw me first. The color drained from her face, leaving a sickly, waxy pallor. Her hands flew to her belly, a reflexive, protective gesture. David's eyes followed her gaze, and when they met mine, his jaw went slack. He looked as if he'd seen an apparition, a specter from a life he'd already buried. "Maya," he breathed, his voice a ghost of its former self. You're supposed to be in Denver." A strange, preternatural calm descended upon me. The hurricane inside me went still, the eye of the storm. My voice, when it came out, was level, almost conversational. "Surprise," I said. The word hung in the dead air. The conference ended early. I thought I'd come home and surprise my husband. The silence that followed was absolute. 20 pairs of eyes stared at me, a gallery of guilt, shock, and pity. My mother made a move to stand, her face a crumpled mask of panic. "Sweetheart," she began. I held up a hand, a gesture that was both a plea and a command. I kept my eyes locked on David. "No," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I think I deserve an explanation. Right here, right now, in front of everyone who was apparently in on the secret." Lisa struggled to her feet, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward and ungainly. "Maya, please," she whimpered. "Let us explain." "Explain what exactly?" My voice was sharp now, honed to a fine edge. "Explain how my husband got my best friend pregnant? Explain how you're 6 months along, which means this has been going on for nearly a year. Explain how every single person I love and trust decided to celebrate this monumental betrayal in my house, on my patio furniture, while I was away earning the money to pay for it all." David took a step toward me, his hands raised in a placating gesture, as if approaching a cornered animal. "Maya, please just calm down. Let's go inside and talk about this." A laugh escaped my lips, a harsh, ugly sound. "Calm down? I just walked into a baby shower for my cheating husband and my backstabbing best friend. In my own home. And you want me to calm down?" I let my gaze sweep across the frozen faces around me. "How long?" I demanded of the crowd. "How long have you all known? How long have you been smiling to my face, asking about my trips, listening to my problems, all while knowing this?" No one spoke. They exchanged furtive, guilty glances, a silent, pathetic game of hot potato with the truth. It was my mother-in-law who finally broke the silence, her voice oozing a false, syrupy sympathy. "My dear, we wanted to tell you. But David and Lisa thought it would be best to wait, to find the right time." "The right time?" My voice rose, cracking the calm facade. "To tell me my marriage is a sham? To tell me my best friend has been sleeping with my husband? That I've been living in a goddamn fool's paradise for God knows how long?" David stepped forward again. "Maya, it wasn't like that. It's not what you think. Lisa and we fell in love. It just happened. We were both lonely. You were always traveling, always working." "Don't," I snarled, cutting him off with a ferocity that surprised even me. "Don't you dare stand there, with your hand on your pregnant mistress, and try to pin this on me. Don't you dare make my work ethic the villain in the cheap, sordid affair you've been conducting behind my back." Lisa finally found her voice, choked with tears. "Maya, I am so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. David and we fought our feelings." "How long?" I demanded again, the question becoming a refrain. "I want a number. I want to know exactly how long you have been making a fool of me." David and Lisa exchanged a look, a fleeting, panicked communication that told me everything. It was longer than I had calculated. "Almost 2 years," David said, his voice so quiet it was almost swallowed by the breeze. 2 years. The words didn't register as a unit of time. They were a physical blow, a punch to the solar plexus that left me breathless. 2 years. That meant it started shortly after Lisa's divorce. All those nights she'd come over, crying on my sofa about her loneliness, drinking my wine, eating my food, while she was sleeping with my husband. All the double dates, the backyard barbecues, the shared holidays, a sprawling, 2-year-long performance. 2 years, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. 2 years of lies. 2 years of me feeling like I was going crazy, like I was imagining the distance between us. 2 years of anniversaries and birthdays where you both looked me in the eye and told me you loved me. My mother stood up then, her chair scraping against the stone patio. Maya, honey, please. They didn't want to hurt you. I turned my full attention to her. This woman who had birthed me, who was supposed to be my staunchest ally. You knew, I stated, not a question but a verdict. When I called you last month, crying because David felt like a stranger, you knew exactly why. When I told you I was terrified our marriage was falling apart, you knew he was building a new one with someone else. She couldn't meet my gaze. Her eyes darted to the half-eaten cake on the table. We all hoped they would come to their senses, she stammered. Too far. I laughed, a raw, broken sound that seemed to come from someone else. She is pregnant with his child, Mom. We are miles past too far. We're in a whole new, uncharted territory of betrayal. I looked around at the sea of guilty faces. And you're all here celebrating. You're happy about this. You brought gifts. You strung up streamers. You ate my food and drank my wine and celebrated the complete and utter destruction of my life. Lisa was openly sobbing now, black mascara trails striping her pale cheeks. Maya, please. I know you hate me, but I do love him. He loves me. We want to be a family. A family? I echoed, the word of profanity. Well, congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together. In the life you've built on the ruins of mine. David's brother, Mark, a man I had always considered a friend, finally spoke up. Maya, maybe you should just take some time. Cool off. Don't say things you'll regret. I rounded on him. Regret? The only thing I regret is wasting 8 years of my life on a man capable of this. The only thing I regret is trusting a woman who called herself my best friend. The only thing I regret is working 60-hour weeks to pay the mortgage on this house. A house that you all felt comfortable turning into the venue for my public humiliation. David's face was ashen. Maya, you don't mean that. Oh, I mean every single word. My gaze fell back on Lisa. Tell me something. When did you decide to plan this little party for today, knowing I was supposed to be on the other side of the country? Her tears came harder. We found out about the baby a few weeks ago. David said you wouldn't be back until Thursday. We thought it would be easier if everyone found out at once. So we could explain everything to you when you got home. Explain, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerously low, calm tone. You were going to sit me down and explain that my husband knocked up my best friend, and I should just accept it? That's what you thought. I gestured around the yard. This wasn't about explaining. This was a victory party. This was a celebration of getting away with it. David, for the first time, seemed to find a sliver of backbone. This is my house, too, Maya, he said defensively. We're married. Not for much longer, I said. The words emerged fully formed, forged in the fire of the last 20 minutes. They were the truest thing I had said all day. I want every single one of you out of my house. Now, my mother rushed toward me. Maya, don't make any rash decisions. You're in shock. I recoiled from her touch as if from a hot iron. Time for what, Mom? Time to get used to the idea that my husband is having a baby with another woman? Time to accept that I should just share him? No. I took one last look at the assembled crowd, my family, my friends, my betrayers. I want you all to remember this moment. Remember my face. Remember the silence. Because from this day forward, when anyone asks what happened to David and Maya's marriage, you can tell them you were here for the final scene. I turned my back to all of them and walked into my house, leaving them standing in the ruins of the party, in the ruins of my life. I stood in the living room, a stranger in a familiar land, listening to the frantic, hushed activity outside. The party was disbanding, not with cheerful goodbyes but with the furtive shuffling of a disgraced army in retreat. I could hear David's strained voice trying to manage the exodus, a captain going down with a ship he himself had scuttled. Moving like an automaton, I went upstairs to our bedroom. No, my bedroom, and pulled the largest suitcase from the top of the closet. I began to pull clothes from drawers and hangers, a furious, indiscriminate harvest. Silks and cottons, work blouses and weekend jeans, all of it tossed into the bag. My hands trembled, not with weakness, but with a seismic rage that was shaking me from the inside out. 2 years. The number echoed in the silent room. 730 days of his lips on mine after they had been on hers. 730 days of her sympathetic ear while her body was entangled with my husband's. His footsteps on the stairs were a heavy, dreaded drumbeat. Maya, I didn't look up. I continued my frantic packing. He appeared in the doorway, a silhouette against the hall light. Maya, please. We need to talk. No, we don't, I said, my voice flat. We need to talk to lawyers. That is the only conversation we will be having from now on. Don't be ridiculous, he said, stepping into the room. His presence felt like a violation. We can work this out. Marriages survive infidelity. I finally stopped and looked at him, at this man whose face I had loved for a decade, and felt nothing but a profound, chilling disgust. Infidelity is a drunken one-night stand, David. What you did was build a second life. You orchestrated a long con. You didn't just make a mistake. You made thousands of choices, every single day, to deceive me. And you got her pregnant. You made me believe I was the broken one when we couldn't conceive. His face flushed a deep, mottled red. I never said you were the problem. You didn't have to. I saw it in your eyes every month when another test came back negative. The disappointment, the pity, all while you were proving your virility just fine with my best friend. I zipped the suitcase with a vicious tug. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with you. Where are you going? He asked, moving to block the door. None of your business. I pushed past him, the contact with his body making my skin crawl. He followed me down the stairs, his voice turning desperate, pleading. Maya, I know I messed up, but we can go to counseling. Please don't throw it all away. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to face him one last time. Work through what, David? The baby? Your 2-year-long affair? The fact that you let my own mother lie to me? There is nothing left to work through. You burned it all to the ground. I could see Lisa's car was still in the driveway. Is she still here? I asked. He nodded miserably. She's upset. She wants to talk to you. Well, that's a shame. Because I have nothing to say to her. I grabbed my purse and my car keys from the hall table. Maya, please, he begged, following me to the front door. Just give me a chance to explain properly. I opened the door and let the cool night air wash over me. You had 2 years to explain. You had 8 years to be a husband. You had hundreds of chances to tell me the truth before I had to walk into a party celebrating my own destruction. I saw tears welling in his eyes, but they elicited no sympathy from me. They were just water. I'll be filing for divorce on Monday morning, I said, my voice as clear and hard as a diamond. Get a lawyer. 20 minutes later, I checked into a sterile, anonymous Hampton Inn on the other side of town. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and faint despair. And there, alone, with the hum of the mini fridge as my only witness, I finally shattered. The sobs were violent, wrenching things that came from a place deep inside me I didn't know existed. But beneath the tidal wave of grief and betrayal, a strange, unexpected current began to pull, relief. For months, I had been living with a ghost, a sense of wrongness I couldn't name. Now I knew. My instincts hadn't been wrong. I hadn't been paranoid. I had been right. I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking, but my purpose was steady. 3 months ago, haunted by David's increasing distance, I had done something that felt disloyal at the time, but now seemed like the sanest act of my life. I had a preliminary consultation with a divorce attorney. I remembered her name, Patricia Wong. I had saved her number. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I had spent the weekend in a fugue state, subsisting on room service and rage, meticulously cataloging every financial detail of our marriage. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting across from Patricia Wong in her sleek, minimalist office. She was a small woman with eyes that missed nothing. I'm sorry it came to this, Maya, she said, pulling up my file. But I'm glad you came to me when you did. The groundwork we laid is about to pay off. I had brought a briefcase full of documents I'd quietly copied months ago, bank statements, investment portfolios, mortgage papers, tax returns. It was the arsenal for a war I hadn't known I was already fighting. What are my options? I asked. A thin, predatory smile touched Patricia's lips. Maya, you are in an exceptionally strong position. Adultery doesn't affect property division in this state, but the financial narrative of your marriage is overwhelmingly in your favor. She laid out the documents like a winning hand in poker. You purchased the house prior to the marriage with inherited funds. That makes it your separate property. The mortgage has been paid exclusively from an account funded by your salary. You are the primary breadwinner by a factor of nearly 3. The investment accounts, the cars, you paid for it all. She leaned back. In essence, David has been living a lifestyle subsidized entirely by you, while conducting a 2-year affair. The courts do not smile upon that. She slid another file across the desk. There's more. After our initial meeting, I had an investigator do a preliminary check. David has been using a joint credit card, one for which you pay the bill, to fund his affair. Dinners, weekends away, gifts for Lisa. He even paid for her initial prenatal appointments with it. The breath caught in my throat. He had used my hard-earned money to court his mistress. That, Patricia said with quiet satisfaction, is called dissipation of marital assets. The court will almost certainly order him to reimburse you. A cold, clean fire of vindication burned through me. What's the timeline? I can file today. He'll be served at his office within 48 hours. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Maya, you need to understand something. David is about to have a very rude awakening. The life he knows is about to vanish. He's going to panic, and he will likely come to you, begging, pleading, trying to manipulate you. Be prepared for him to get very, very nasty when he realizes what he's losing. The house, I said. He has to leave? It's your separate property. He has no legal claim. He will have 30 days from the date of service to vacate. I signed the papers, my signature firm and clear. Walking out of that office building into the bright morning sun, I felt like I had shed a heavy, suffocating skin. For the first time since Friday, I was in control. David was served on Wednesday. My phone rang 17 minutes later. His voice was a raw nerve of panic and disbelief. Maya, what the hell is this? You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life, David. I replied, my own voice a steady and calm. But 30 days? To get out of the house? That's my home. Actually, I said, quoting Patricia, it's my separate property. You've been living there as my spouse. A status that is about to be revoked. This isn't fair, Maya. We built a life there. No, David. I built a life there, and you brought another woman into it. You built a lie. I could hear his ragged breathing. He tried to pivot, to play the victim. I was lonely, Maya. You were never home. So this is my fault. Because I worked to pay for your car, your clothes, the roof over your head, and the credit card you used to take your girlfriend out on dates. A long silence stretched. He started to cry then, the pathetic, gulping sobs of a child who's been caught. Maya, I'll end it with Lisa. I swear. We can work this out. Don't do this to me. To you? I laughed. David, she is 6 months pregnant with your child. This isn't a video game you can just reset. You are going to be a father. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I don't want to be a father with her, he wailed. I want to be a father with you. The sheer, monumental audacity of it left me speechless. He wanted me to take him back, to try again for a baby, while his other child was gestating in the womb of my ex-best friend. David, I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. You have 30 days. I suggest you spend less time calling me and more time on Zillow. You're going to need to figure out how to support your new family on your own salary. Good luck with that. The calls from our families started that night. It was a coordinated campaign of guilt and manipulation. My mother was first. Divorce is so permanent, sweetheart. Are you sure you've thought this through? Mom, I said, David having a baby with another woman is also quite permanent. Did you think that through when you decided to attend their party? David's mother was next. Maya, you have to be compassionate. David is going to be a father. He needs stability. Are you seriously asking me to remain married to your son so he can better support his pregnant mistress? I asked aghast. Well, she said, hesitating for only a second. Lisa is a lovely girl, and you're so successful, dear. You'll be fine on your own. The message was clear. My success made me disposable. My self-sufficiency meant I was expected to gracefully step aside and subsidize their new life. By 10 p.m., after fending off calls from his brother, my sister, and an aunt I hadn't spoken to in years, I turned off my phone. I sat in the dark of my hotel room and realized a profound truth. None of them were asking me to forgive David for my sake. They were asking me to do it for theirs. My divorce was an inconvenience. It upset the comfortable social order. It forced them to confront an ugly truth they had all been complicit in ignoring. And in that moment, I knew I would not bend. I would not make this easy for any of them. The divorce was finalized in a record 6 weeks. David, on the advice of his beleaguered lawyer, didn't contest a thing. He knew he had no legal ground to stand on. The first sign of his new reality came 3 days before his deadline to move out. Maya, he said when I answered an unknown number. I can't find an apartment. No one will approve me. My income isn't high enough. For 8 years, he had lived in my 4-bedroom house, driven a late-model sedan, and enjoyed a life far beyond his means. Now, the stark reality of his $45,000 salary was crashing down on him. That sounds like a personal problem, David, I said. Please, he begged. Just a few more weeks. I'll be homeless. I felt a flicker of something. Pity, maybe, or just the ghost of a habit of fixing his problems. But then I remembered the yellow streamers, the cake, my mother's smiling face. You have had 6 weeks to figure this out, David. What have you been doing? Apartment hunting. But the rent is insane. I can't afford to live anywhere decent. Then perhaps you should have considered the financial implications of infidelity before you embarked on a 2-year affair. I was merciless, and I felt no shame. Did you ask your mother for help? The one who was so concerned about your future? Did you ask your brother? The one who told me not to say things I'd regret. There was a long pause. They all said no, he admitted, his voice small. The hypocrisy was staggering. All those champions of family and forgiveness had slammed their doors in his face the moment it required an actual sacrifice from them. Then I guess you're learning a valuable lesson, David, I said. Choices have consequences. 3 days later, I had the locks changed. He left the keys on the counter with a note that just said, "I'm sorry." 2 months later, he called again. He was crying so hard I could barely understand him. I got evicted, he choked out. I couldn't make rent. Maya, I'm living in my car. Every instinct I had screamed to hang up, but a morbid curiosity kept me on the line. What about Lisa? I asked. A broken, bitter laugh crackled through the phone. Lisa's gone. We're not together anymore. I sat down. What do you mean? She's pregnant with your child. Was, he corrected, his voice a raw whisper. She had a miscarriage. 6 weeks ago. The doctor said it was just one of those things. The baby, the catalyst for all this destruction, gone. I felt a confusing mix of emotions, but the strongest, surprisingly, was a pang of sorrow. I'm sorry, David, I said, and I meant it. After she lost the baby, he continued, his voice hollow, everything changed. She said there was no point anymore. She said she realized I couldn't give her the life she wanted, the life she was used to. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Lisa had left him for the exact same reason he was now destitute. Money. Without my income propping him up, David was just a man with a mediocre job and a mountain of poor choices. Maya, he whispered, the sound desperate. I know I have no right, but could I just sleep on your couch for a few nights? Just until I get on my feet. He wanted to come back. Back to the house he had defiled. Back to the life he had thrown away, expecting me to be his safety net. David, I said slowly, letting each word land with the weight of a stone. Do you remember what you said to me on the patio that day? You said you were lonely because I was always working. You blamed me. Do you know why I worked so hard, David? I did it for us. I did it so we could have a beautiful home, so we could have financial security, so we could build a future. And while I was building, you were demolishing. You used the security I provided as your playground for betrayal. And now that the playground is closed, you want to come back inside and sleep on the couch. I stood up and walked through my quiet, peaceful house. My house. The answer is no, David. You cannot stay here. You are not welcome here. You made your choice. This is the consequence. The final piece of the puzzle came from Lisa herself. I ran into her in the grocery store a few weeks later. She looked haunted, a pale, thin version of the vibrant woman she had once been. We ended up having coffee, a surreal postscript to our dead friendship. She told me everything. That the affair had started not 2 years ago, but 3.5. That David had lied about the timeline to lessen his guilt. But the most damning revelation came at the end. After the miscarriage, she said, her hands trembling around her teacup, while I was still bleeding, still grieving our baby, he told me he thought we should break up. He said the pregnancy had been an accident, and without it, there was no reason for us to be together. Her eyes, filled with a terrible, newfound clarity, met mine. And then he asked me if I thought you would take him back. My jaw dropped. Even after everything, I was still capable of being shocked by him. He saw you as his backup plan, Lisa whispered. When I told him you would never forgive him, he got angry. He blamed me. He said I had ruined his life by getting pregnant in the first place. She leaned forward. Maya, he's not a man who makes mistakes. He's a parasite. He attaches himself to whoever can give him the most. When you were his best option, he stayed with you. When he thought I could give him a family and he could still live off your success, he chose me. When I lost the baby and became a liability, he tried to go back to you. It was never about love. It was only ever about him. I saw him one last time, 6 months after that. He was sitting alone at the bar of a mid-range chain restaurant. He looked old, tired, and profoundly defeated. I walked over, not out of pity, but out of a need for a final, definitive period at the end of this long, painful chapter. He told me his life was a mess. He confessed that he had cheated not because I was lacking, but because my success made him feel inadequate. You were perfect, he slurred over his third whiskey. And I couldn't handle it. I had to blow it up before you realized you could do better. It was the most pathetic, self-serving excuse I had ever heard. And then, he had the gall to ask the question, Maya, is there any chance for us? I looked at this shell of a man, this ghost from a former life. He didn't want me. He wanted my salary, my stability, my home. He wanted a return to the easy life he had so carelessly detonated. David, I said, standing up from the bar stool, you haven't learned a thing. You're not sorry for what you did. You're just sorry for what you lost. I walked away and never looked back. That was 2 years ago. My map looks different now. The landmarks of David and Lisa have faded, eroded by time into insignificant footnotes. My life, which I thought had been irrevocably destroyed, was merely cleared for new construction. I got the promotion. I renovated the house, exorcising their ghosts with fresh paint and new furniture. The backyard where they held their party is now a thriving garden I planted with my own 2 hands. I travel for joy. I've seen the sunset over Santorini and the cherry blossoms in Kyoto. I am dating a man named Marcus. He is a surgeon, a kind, brilliant man who sees my success not as a threat, but as something to be celebrated. He is my partner, not my dependent. David, I hear, is still struggling, trapped in a cycle of low-paying jobs and lonely nights. Lisa is a single mother, living with her parents. My relationship with my mother is slowly healing, but the trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. Sometimes, the most catastrophic events are not endings, but violent, necessary beginnings. Walking into that baby shower was the worst moment of my life. It was also the most liberating. It stripped away the lies and forced me to see the truth, not just about them, but about myself. I learned that I am resilient. I learned that my value is not determined by a man's fidelity or a friend's loyalty. I learned that I am the sole cartographer of my own life, and the territory ahead is vast, beautiful, and entirely mine to explore. David didn't just give me a reason to leave. He gave me a reason to build a life that was infinitely better than the one he'd destroyed. He gave me myself back. It was the only honest gift he ever gave me.